So, should we get this started?
Sure.
I guess so. Let's pod.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, first of all, what are you guys wearing? You have like band shirts or something?
I should have.
No band shirt for me. I actually did think about it. I thought, should I wear a band shirt? But some of the stuff that I want to say about these albums, I felt like, oh, well, he's got like this shirt on. Of course, he would say that about these other albums. So I went plain black.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing a band shirt for my friend Trapper's band, Scorched Moon. I saw him, he toured in Boston last year, so I got to actually meet him in person for the first time. We met online, and that was pretty fun. And I, of course, reviewed his album on the website, canthisEvenBeCalledMusic.com.
Yeah, and I'm wearing an old, some kind of monster t-shirt.
Oh wow! Yikes!
Yeah,
Nice.
I know, right?
Peak era
Nice.
Metallica. For sure.
I don't know how old I was. What year did that came out?
And
2008?
Goo it. Get on Goo.
No, before that, right?
Are we even metalheads if we can't rattle off Metallica's entire discography with release years?
2004. It looks like.
Yeah, that's right.
I think
My
that's
excuse is that I was 14 years old.
It's a documentary slash drama, 2.5 hours long.
Yep.
That seems unnecessary.
That's 2.5 hours you'll never get back if you
Yeah.
invest in that.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess a cool thing we could do like next time maybe is like the shirt thing. Like you want to plug a band you like, just like wear the shirt and then you, I don't know, talk about it.
I've got like 3 band shirts, so that'll get me through a couple episodes, and then I'll
Yeah,
have to just
I
recycle.
have a few, but I haven't bought many recently, so they're
Yeah.
all older. But
Yeah, mine are pretty old too.
I've got way too many. I'm
But,
losing space.
With that segment and that that view count, we're gonna get like so many shirts being sent to us.
There we go.
Please
Send us
wear
merch.
my shirt.
We'll plug it.
yeah,
Exactly. We're sold out. So yeah, I guess we could do like introduce ourselves.
Go for it.
Yeah, who want to go first?
You, dude.
Oh man.
You.
You're the
Well, all right.
linchpin of all this.
You're the guy.
I
Yeah.
guess I have to, right?
Yeah.
Well, my name's Dave, and I'm like the creator of Can This Even Be Called Music? Started that way back in, I think, 2012 as a way to express my views on music and especially like talk about the music I loved and like the obscure bands that I found on the net or wherever, and just like spread the love, I guess. And I've kept doing that for like 12 years now, and that's where we're at right now, and we have like some fancy collaborators here today who all have a hand on making the blog what it is today, a beautiful website of obscure music. And yeah, so musically, I've played music for a while too, and I've played in many bands. Right now, I'm not in any band, so to speak, but I do have a few projects online and like Melopia and others, perhaps. And so yeah, I guess that's about it for me.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Jeff. I started out as kind of a web developer helping out with the site. Moved it off of like a WordPress.org blogspot type landing page to like an actual WordPress installation, and started running the site there, and then started writing some reviews because I'm also into the music and everything. I play guitar, although very casually. I've never been I've been in a cover band in college, but never any serious music that I've written myself. But I play as a hobby every now and then, and I am a frequent listener of music. So
Cool.
You can go next. My name is Bishop. Found Can This Even Be Called Music? Actually looking for music recommendations, metal recommendations to play on a radio show that my friend and I used to do for our local college. It's called The Funeral Directory, and we were just always looking for a concentrated place to find cool new releases specifically for metal, and came across Can This Even Be Called Music, and it ended up being like a reference essentially every week. The radio show is every Monday. So we would play stuff that we found from there. And I've always loved yapping. I was born to yap, I would say. And Dave just asked if I wanted to review some stuff. Pretty sure the first thing I reviewed was that last Plebeian Grandstand album that came out in like 2021 or 2022, I think. And I've written several dozen reviews. It's been a little while, but I've written a bunch of reviews. I play guitar and bass. I like writing and yapping. I reckon that's pretty much most of it.
Great. I'm Matt. I found Dave, similarly to Bishop, just searching for obscure, weird music in the mid 2010s. And, Dave's site covered a whole lot of stuff that more mainstream blogs wouldn't go near. And I appreciated that. I didn't like all of it, but I liked a lot of what I found through there. So we became friends. I wrote some for the site from like 2016 to probably 19. And then I sort of tapered off because life stuff happened and writing became more of a burden. But, I got to review a lot of cool stuff. I still like to do sort of year-end lists because I'm a big rankings and objective, grading of albums kind of guy, which, Dave and I used to butt heads because I would want to say at the end of a review, like, this is a 91 out of 100. And it's like, no, we're not going to do that. I play guitar, bass, drums, a tiny bit of keyboard, and any other instrument I can get my hands on. My main musical project is Patmos Atoimos, which hasn't released anything since 2018, but stuff is in the works. No particular date for when it's going to come out, but, sometime in the future. And I'm excited to be talking about more weird music with you guys.
And actually, your last album came out on our label, like home label. Like,
that's right.
The shittiest label ever, but
and it's all something. My fault. When you start off with an album like that, it's doomed.
Exactly, right? Well, I guess that's that, right?
That's us.
That's us. And basically the idea of the podcast is making like a book club kind of thing. So we each picked an album. Well, the idea is we each pick an album for every episode, and then we like talk about it. Some the one that picks it like introduces it, then we all ramble about it. And basically this, like, since we're already half the year past, we're kind of splitting the first half of the year in two. So we're doing a first episode with 4 albums, and then we're gonna do a second one later with a second batch of 4 albums, and then we're gonna try to make it a like 3 months thing, every 3 months, and a video. But we're gonna try hard. So Matt.
Yeah. So
you want to talk to us about your album.
Let's do it. So the idea of this format is each of us is going to sort of bring one album to the table to discuss. And as we're all racking our brains for the high quality stuff we've been listening to the past few months, most of it was in the metal or progressive realm of things. And Dave encouraged us to, is there any pop? Is there any jazz? Can we get something else going in here? So there's been a couple of good jazz albums that I've listened to this year. There's the new Kamasi Washington. I'm a huge fan of his work. That is a great album. But I wanted to bring to the table and highlight a lesser known artist, Keegan Tawa, who released the album Tessellation earlier this year. Keegan is from Philadelphia, is a saxophonist primarily, but also plays a handful of other things, including synthesizer. So what you get with this album is sort of a blend of what might be called world jazz with influence from Middle Eastern and Asian and all kinds of other things, but also with some electronic elements. And Keegan has brought together a smattering of other artists on other instruments from all across the world. The Bandcamp says it features 25 artists from Turkey, Iran, Tunisia, Israel, India, China, and the United States. So this really is world music in not a genre sense, but in a multicultural sonic sense. And the album kind of starts off a little, there's like an ambient interlude at the beginning, and you're like, okay, I'm not sure what I'm getting into here. But then when track 2, 12 Freedoms hits, you get this bombastic saxophone, you get all these other woodwind and string instruments merging into the sound. You get some complex timings, maybe influenced a little bit by sort of the conical, not Western counting time signature thing. I'm not completely sure, but it definitely has some of that vibe. At its heavier, more intense moments, there's no real metal on this album. It is jazz, but it does get sort of intense. And in those moments, it reminds me of the Hago album that came out, I think, back in 2018, which I was a big fan of, that kind of blended sort of Middle Eastern, Indian sounding jazz with metal. This is like, if that didn't have the metal, some of that is on this album. But at the same time, it also revels in these lighter, more atmospheric tones. There's lots of memorable melodies that get sort of worked and reworked and fade in and out throughout the compositions. And I just, it's a really impressive album. It's very technically proficient. Keegan's saxophone work, but also a lot of the other instrumentalists just bring a lot to the table, and the compositions are great. The performance is great. And it's got 2 supporters right now on Bandcamp. So more people need to be checking this out. I think if you like jazz with a little bit of, ethnic flavor to it, should be right up your alley.
One of us is you, right? I mean, one of the 2 supporters is you, right?
No, unfortunately. I'm supporting it here, but you won't see me.
Hey man, loved it. I ain't gonna pay you though. It's not that good.
Well, okay, so I listened to that. That's not an album I had on my radar. And at first, the first track you mentioned, I was like, okay, that's kind of a, I don't know, Middle Eastern folk / house or electronic music kind of thing. And then it kind of goes in many directions, right? Yeah. It goes into jazz, goes into, I wouldn't say rock, but you said more intense moments. Mm-hmm. And then there's all that folk instrumentation that's truly amazing. That oud player is crazy. And there's a bunch of other instruments from Middle Eastern, from the Middle East and from India, I think. And it's really cool to have that kind of breadth musically, but in the end, that's not an album that I gel with. So it's good. It's very proficient, like you said. I don't think it's something I'd go to listen like twice or thrice or 4 times. But that was a good recommendation. I really liked it.
Do you know of a better oud player than the one on this album?
Not by name.
Okay. What is an oud?
It's kind of a lute with no frets.
Okay.
It's kind of a
Fretless lute?
yeah, kind of a traditional instrument from the Middle East. I used to have one, like one of those cheap ouds, but I don't have it anymore. So
Cheap oud.
yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
You know where to land that cheap oud.
uh, I suppose I'll go next. Yeah. I also like this. It's recorded extremely well. I don't know if this is a super common thing with more jazzy things, but especially with the saxophone, it seems it's very cool when you can hear the breathing and the clicking
yeah.
of the keys.
I love
I
that.
feel like if you don't have that, dude, you fucked up.
Yeah.
Like it's not cool. And this has that every track, so it sounds really cool.
You gotta
One
have
thing
like multiple room mics, like to room
Yeah.
your to mic your saxophone, I guess.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that, you know, that Colin Stetson guy?
That's what I was gonna say actually.
Oh my God.
On the last Tim Hecker album, he's on some of the tracks, and you can
Yeah.
like hear him. You can hear his circular breathing on some of the songs, and it
Wow.
sounds really cool. It sounds really nice. So I thought, yeah, recording super good and intimate. On the Bandcamp, for percussion, it just says anonymous for like every song. I was curious about that. I don't know if Keegan is just kind of afraid to say like this is just a sample I found on like Ableton or something.
It's actually Matt.
Yeah, it's Matt. Well, okay, so some of the songs say there's a drum kit and they name the guy on the drum kit, but percussion just straight up anonymous. Thought that was interesting. The guy himself, Keegan, is like shredded for one thing. He lives in Philly. He's shredded. He's got an insane jawline. He's playing saxophone.
Oh yeah,
And
he's handsome.
he is sexy as hell and loves the world. So that's, I mean, what's not to be like jealous of, you know? He loves the world. He's sexy as hell. My favorite track was Wreath of Gold, and that was the one that I guess had no other collaborators on it. But I thought that the melody of that song was the most memorable. It felt maybe it was like the most sad song to me, Wreath of Gold. Those are my thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I was impressed with this one too. I don't listen to jazz much, but the variety with the 25 artists from around the world and just the quality of it was very good. And I didn't really dislike any songs. It just all sounded pretty good to me, and I was impressed with it. Yeah.
You know, Wreath of Gold, if I'm remembering correctly, it sort of starts off saxophone and then goes into synthesizer. And there's a couple different songs that kind of have that general vibe where, you know, Dave pointed out, it's like it's jazz, but then it's house or it's electronic influence somehow. And I think that's relatively unique. I mean, I don't have an extensive jazz library of stuff that I listen to. So there's, you know, people in the comments, let us know who's out there fusing jazz and electronic that we're not aware of. But this is some of the first kind of stuff like that I'd heard, and I was really into it.
In the comments below.
The transition from Wreath of Gold to the title track, Tessellation, is pretty freaking good.
No.
Tessellation's super upbeat. It's super busy, and Wreath of Gold is just neither of those things. So it's got a little bit of everything. Salt and pepper,
There you
if
go.
you will.
I will.
Okay.
Great.
I gotta say the album art, I liked it.
Yeah. It draws you in for sure.
Yeah. I like mosaics.
Yeah.
So I learned about this album because a friend of mine from Philly, I guess, had heard of or seen this guy sent it to me on Spotify, and like this is a friend where 2/3 of what they ask me to check out, I'll probably check out, but the other stuff I'm like, I'm probably not going to like this. But if there's a personal recommendation plus attractive album art, I'm going to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
That definitely helps.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you want me to introduce this next record or you? I think you actually chose it, Dave.
Yeah, I did. I'm talking about Azure.
Yes. Let's go.
So I got the big box 2 CD with I don't know,
Wow.
it looks like, oh, it's stickers actually.
Yeah,
Stickers
Wow.
send me that.
and booklet. And it comes with the book, which I haven't read yet. I'm like
How thick is that? That's pretty thick.
Wow.
at page 36. I'm reading like an eight-year-old. It's got like 300 pages.
Wow.
And
Any
there's
pictures
just
in that thing?
I'm sorry?
Any pictures in that thing or no? No pictures?
No, it's just like words. Boring.
Oh,
Right.
Wow. Wow.
My kids won't read anything that's not a graphic novel, so
Wow.
Same.
And actually just like the three first chapters, I'm just like impressed of the quality of the writing in that. It just like it starts off really weird with a kind of it's a really weird fantasy world, I think. And I was kind of put off by that at first. I like my fantasy like more of a dark fantasy and like or realist fantasy or something like that. Kind of like a Game of Thrones or
Yeah. Yeah.
Berserk, stuff like that.
Cool.
But this is not that. And well, at least that's not what I'm getting right now. But it's actually very well written, and I'm kind of drawn to keep reading. So I'll keep reading, and maybe I'll talk about it later. But it's interesting for now. Well, at least the three first chapters got me hooked. And it's not the story of the album. It's not the story of him. It's actually a story that is in the same world, but I think like they made songs that that come from this book or something like that, but it's not the story that is on film. So I actually don't know the story that happens on film. I know there's a lavender fox and something like that. But other than the metaphysics of the album, the music is actually amazing. I've started listening to Azure with their debut album or EP, their debut release, and it was very interesting, and it had some great potential. But now that potential, I think, is fully fleshed out, fully attained with FIM. At first they had like that programmed drums, and I'm not a big fan of programmed drums, especially if you don't put in the work to make it sound good. I know like Pig Destroyer does his own programmed drums, and they sound just like a real drum. So, it can work, but you gotta put in the work and also maybe put in the money to get some really good samples or something like that. But that's something that put me off at first. And with each subsequent release, the music grew better. But until they had a real drum, I wasn't fully satisfied with the band. But once they reach that point, man, I feel it's so good. It's just like, I think it's pretty much traditional, modern, progressive rock. and what's his name? Chris, right? Christopher.
Chris Sampson. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a crazy voice, man. It's a beautiful voice, and he's singing like hell. And the compositions are, I think, are great. They have some um, pretty long songs, and it's a bunch of like there's orchestra parts, and there's more intense parts with more like rock instruments. And it goes all over the place, and the album's quite long, and I think it's very good throughout. And yeah, that's why I decided to bring it up today, and I want to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of Azure before, and I was very impressed with this album. And I love like this kind of upbeat prog, like the Flower Kings and Kaipa, and like this is just right up in that wheelhouse. And it was a joy from beginning to end to me. And the variety of the vocalists definitely shows. At parts, he reminds me of Daniel Gildenlow from Pain of Salvation. At other parts, he's like super high, like Mike Mills from Toe Hider in the Lavender Fox. That song was just crazy. And yeah, I love this album. This is like the perfect kind of prog rock album for me.
Wow, I also want to say I get vibes from like Coheed and Cambria with that one too.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, especially with the high pitched vocals and the kind of pop pop sounds around the rock thing, and with the whole concept album slash band thing, and yeah, really get some Coheed vibes.
Bishop, I want you to go next because I want to come in last.
Okay. So I had never heard of this band. I really don't listen to much progressive anything, I don't think. If I do, it's not like I'm seeking it out, really. And so in my notes, I'll just read verbatim some of my notes. Nerd ass shit is the first thing that I wrote.
It is.
It's some nerd ass shit. Yeah, I'm fine with nerd ass shit. And I think also like with fantasy stuff, like Dave said, I kind of want darker fantasy stuff, maybe, a scarier monster. If there's got to be a monster, I mean, make the monster scary. We got Lavender Fox here and Moonrise and stuff like that. Not very scary. It is not scary. But what I wrote was, I'm genuinely curious what you guys are thinking when you listen to music like this. Are you imagining yourselves in these situations? Are you imagining what's being described in the lyrics? I relate to the music that I like and listen to the most, but I don't find myself relating to these songs. Do you relate to these songs? I don't even need to relate to the lyrics necessarily. And that's true. I am genuinely curious. When you listen to music like this, are you thinking like, damn, I'm in there right now. I'm in that story. I'm in that world. Do you feel that way?
Well, I think it's like sometimes yes, sometimes no, but it's like with I think like this kind of album, like the concept album in Prague, it's more like you would call a movie or a protagonist in a story or whatever, and you can sympathize with them or not, but it's more of like it's more you follow their story, not like it's not the song that will maybe make you feel connected with the lyrics, but maybe the arc of the character or something like that.
Yeah, totally. What about you, Jeff? When you're listening to the tracks, are you saying, dude, I'm in there right now?
Admittedly, I don't focus too much on the lyrics when I listen to music. For me, it's just the sound of everything, and I kind of just get lost in it. And like I'll pick up certain phrases here and there, but it's not really the focus for me. Just everything comes together, and I just kind of go wherever it takes me. But sometimes I'm into it, and sometimes I just it just sounds good. So yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fine. And like I was saying, I don't necessarily need to relate to the lyrics. Like Mars Volta is my favorite band of all time. Do I relate to every single
I'm not
song?
sure anyone can relate to Mars.
Yeah, but you can relate to music if there are like the sounds or the musical sensibilities feel familiar to you enough. And because this is it is poppy. It's poppy and it's bright, and it's almost like if the vocalist of like Current 93 were not like this weird Gnostic weirdo freak, you know? Which I love Current 93, but it kind of has this like, this album makes me think of like Dragon Ball Z, sort of. Like it's kind of cartoony, and it has these like righteous parts. Righteous stuff usually kind of turns me off by default. Not all the time, but I have to be warmed up to righteousness, I think, in music.
And in life.
And in life, yeah, have to be warmed up to righteousness.
So this is where I talk about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So.
Yeah.
Amen.
We'll get there on the next one, actually. I guess the closing thoughts were like, it's less horny Closure in Moscow, sort of. Okay. Closure in Moscow is like, he knows that he's like, that guy has a body, and he knows that he has a body. The vocalist of Azure, he's not thinking of his body, really. I
get what you mean by that.
Yeah. Like Closure in Moscow, dude, he knows he has a penis. This dude, his music does not indicate that they have any sort of sexual organs at all.
Have you watched the Barbie movie?
I have not seen it.
Totally,
well, it's like that.
It's sexless music. And that being said, I really appreciate the earnesty in making music like this, because your heart has to be fucking in it. You can't write some lyrics like this and not really mean it, or be a person like that.
And write a fucking book, right?
Yeah. Those dudes they're being honest. They are thinking that every day. And so I like that. I'm happy with that.
Yeah, if you're making like ridiculous fantasy music, you either lean into the ridiculousness and like really play that up, or you take it dead serious. And Azure is taking it like, yeah, we're absolutely serious about this fantasy world with a lavender fox, the doppelganger, and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, if you're selling it like that, I'll hear it like that. That's great. I'm not going to bury the lead. I think this is the best album released in the last 5 years.
Whoa. And coming from you, it's not a...
No way! You are a psycho.
I am. But so I echo a lot of what Dave said in the opening blurb of this. I came to Azure with the Red Tail EP in 2018. It's a single 20-minute song. It's got Chris on vocals and Galen on guitar, and I think that's it. I think everything else is like kind of, maybe the synths were played by them, but like the drums are programmed. I think some of the synths and keyboards are programmed. There's a lot of it that just sounds sort of artificial, and you're like, I wish this was real. It would sound so much better if it was real. But at the same time, given that limitation, I was still blown away by what they were able to pull off with that song. And I was like, boy, if they really get it together, this is going to be something special. And their first full length after that, 2021, of Brian and Angel's Beaks, was not special in the way that I was looking for. It was very mixed. It had songs on it that were really good and really like mythic, in the same, like Red Tail has the same kind of energy as Fim, as it's totally invested in this fantasy world. They are linked somehow. It's not like one is a direct continuation of the other, but there's some thematic, they take place in the same universe. And then like some of the songs from Of Brian and Angel's Beaks take place in that universe, but then some are just kind of there. And so that album was kind of hit and miss. I was like, I don't know, did they lose it? Like, what's going on here? So then Fim comes out, my expectations is a little bit tempered, and just like 2 tracks in, I'm like, they got it, they did it, they nailed it, everything sounds right, this is real people playing real music. There are still like there's like synthesized steel drums, but like I don't mind it. Like it makes sense in the context of the album. And that's one of, I think, the huge strengths of this album is one is that they take it so seriously, and two is that with good narrative prog, every part of the music sounds meaningful and deliberate and intentional, and it serves to carry the story forward. And bad prog misses that, and it's just like, here's a riff, here's another riff, here's a different riff, and it's like, I don't get the purpose of these riffs. Everything on Fim is purposeful. The high parts, the low parts, the crazy high vocals that Chris hits multiple different times. And there's so much, like the heart of this band is Chris and Galen. And when Chris goes crazy on vocals, very often behind that, Galen's doing something crazy on guitar, and they're not competing with each other. They're like in perfect sync, doing contrasting things that fit, and at the same time conveying narrative. And I'm just like, I personally, being the nerd, the prog nerd, it tickles every sweet spot. It is everything I'm looking for in an album, and I'm continuously blown away by what they accomplished here.
What do you think about, how much do you like Dragon Force?
So I listened to Inhuman Rampage nonstop in the summer that it came out. And then other than that, that's about it. I have not followed them since. Like, I burned out on that album specifically, and I was like, okay. Because then after that, they just kind of kept releasing the same album, but changing the song titles. You know, it's like, once you've heard 1 or 2 Dragon Force albums, you get it. You're like, okay, I see what we're gonna go verse, chorus, 8 solos, bridge, chorus, and okay, fine, sure.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know which song it was, the last Dragon Force song I heard, but like, I remember that the subject matter of the song was just about like a badass car, and there was part of me that was like, maybe that's awesome, because there's something special. There's just something special about being like, let's write a song about a badass car.
Sure.
But yeah, it's like, well, what does that have to do with dragons? It's you've lost it. You know, you exhausted the dragons.
They sang everything you can sing about dragons. They had to branch out. Oh, I did want to respond where you were talking about like, what do I feel like when I'm listening to an album? Like him? Good narrative prog is in the same wheelhouse as like a JRPG. I'm a huge JRPG guy, and I don't feel like I'm in the story, but I feel like I'm invested in watching the story. You could say the same for like a Lord of the Rings movie type thing, or even a Marvel movie. I'm not a Marvel guy, but like, I don't feel like I'm a superhero, but I like seeing it on the screen. And so like, I'm not in this fantasy universe, but I'm invested in, what is Fim doing? How did Fim get the lavender fox? Or the lavender fox got its wing stuck under a rock, and Fim had to cut its wing off to get it out. And now the lavender fox is mad at Fim, but it's okay. Fim's going to make everything better with its magical power. And then the fox, and now the fox is sky sailing without wings, and Fim gets a doppelganger somewhere along the way. And at the end, Fim separates from the doppelganger. And I don't fully understand the story either. And I'm a little bit disappointed to hear the book is not going to clarify it for me, but as best I can tell, like, you can resonate with some of the emotional beats, like reading good literature or watching a good movie or playing a good video game. A good album can do that same thing for me.
Yeah, totally. I like, about it being totally cohesive. You were talking about prog, for it to be most effective. You know, bad prog is just like, it feels as if you can't understand the reasoning behind each part. Mm-hmm. I like what you said about this feeling like no one's competing with each other. Every single part feels deliberate. Like it has a reason. And I think when you have that level of deliberation, it's very easy to be immersed in that story. Immersed, invested. But yeah, I was curious, like, this was my first time ever hearing of this band or listening to them. I really don't listen to much prog at all in the first place. So I do like fantasy stuff. But maybe I would have to re-listen to this one, because I'm really not stubborn. And I think that someone selling me on an album who has really enjoyed it can change my opinion of the album pretty drastically. So I liked what you said a lot. I think I'll listen to it again.
Awesome.
You've read the lyrics, Matt, right?
I have, but I haven't fully understood them.
Yeah, because you talked about the story, and I'm like, I didn't get that. I'm like Jeff in the sense that I'm not a big lyrics guy. I'm not gonna read the lyrics or even care about the singing other than like the notes he's hitting or something like that. It's just not my, I guess, my first interest or what I'm listening to at first when I'm listening to an album. But I'm glad to know they are good.
One thing people will learn about me, listeners will learn as we go through this, is I'm biased against instrumental music in general because for me, music is storytelling. And you can tell a story without lyrics, but it's a higher bar to clear. Jazz is the exception. Jazz isn't necessarily meant to have lyrics. So, I bring up Keegan Tawa and it's like, well, there's no singing on that album. That's jazz. But if you're selling me rock or metal, tell me something with it. You have to be very special to release a metal album with no vocals that I care about. We are going to talk about one of those today, ironically, but in general, I want an album. I'm biased toward a concept album. If you tell me an album's a concept album and it's got a 20-minute song on it, I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah.
That's my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I'm also biased towards that, but you've mentioned like jazz is instrumental music, but actually, it didn't start like that, right? The standards, they all have like lyrics to them. They are all like songs that basically became instrumental when people picked up the saxophone or stuff like that. But
this is sort of parallel threads of like vocal jazz and instrumental jazz, but they're closely linked.
Yeah.
I would say that I am a lyrics, maybe kind of snobby in a way. In metal music, I really don't think that many people are writing good lyrics in metal music. I hear it. Yeah. Well, I hear lyrics, I think, that are like offensively bad the most in metal music, which is unfortunate.
And you don't mean offensive in terms of content. You just mean the quality of the lyrics.
The quality is so bad that it undoes the quality of the instrumental. That happens pretty often with metal music.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that maybe I feel like a bit of a lyrics snob. So I do. I didn't read all the lyrics for this, but again, you don't have to even pick out every single word just to know this dude means it. And it was funny listening to you talk about this like storyline chronologically, because it made me remember the songs in order. That's kind of crazy. Like I said, I'll really have to come back to that one. Yeah.
So do you guys have like favorite lyricists?
Definitely.
Name one.
I mean, I think that Cedric's lyrics are actually good. 100% of the time, are they completely like, I know exactly what he means all the time? Of course not. But that fantasy
it's
world,
like psychedelic.
Yeah. His lyrics on the Cryptomnesia album, where it's more personal and it's like super angry, some of those lyrics I think are just absolutely very, very good.
Oh, yeah.
Zach Hill plays drums on that album. I actually think that Zach Hill's lyrics are really, really good too. His lyrics in the ILYs are very strange and interesting. On his solo records, his lyrics are super good and summary and like relatable in this kind of twisted, mangled way. Love their lyrics. Circa Survive, great lyrics. Love him. Yeah, a bunch of stuff. There's awesome. a bunch of guys.
Matt?
I'm thinking like the quickest lyric examples that come to mind are bad ones. Like one of my hugest influences is Opeth. And then if you ask me for an Opeth lyric, some of them are good, but then I can't get out of my mind on Black Rose Immortal, he screams, "It is cold in here." And I'm like, don't do that. That's
that
not
rocks.
That's weird. And then like my favorite album of all time is KO Dot's Choirs of the Eye. And as I've been listening to that, I saw them play it live last year and revisited it after that. And I realized like I don't even know some of the words on this album. It's my favorite album. And I'm trying to sing along to it. And like I don't even know what Toby says right here. So I think bad lyrics can bring an album down, but once they cross the threshold of into not bad, it's sort of easier just to tune them out. You're like, okay, these are fine.
Yeah.
If it's not like a narrative concept with a clean vocalist where you can hear what's going on, metal lyrics, if they're being screamed, if they're okay, I'm probably not going to pay too much attention to them.
And also, like, if you can even tell what they're saying, like, I think that, there's a ton of the paradox ass metal lyrics, metal bands just talking about some vague paradox, and like it essentially makes you feel less than nothing. That being said, Wormed, that dude, another one where you feel immersed, like he really is thinking that shit all the time, and you can't tell anything that he's saying, but you read the lyrics and you're like, okay, that kind of rocks. His lyrics he's allowed, Wormed or maybe the only metal band allowed to talk about some paradox. Like that, they're the only one.
The flip side of that is you've got stuff like the first Kraanerg album has printed lyrics, but you can cross-check them with the song, and that's definitely not the words they're saying. Like the fourth track has like 4 words of lyrics, and it's like this whole song has lyrics. I have no idea. There's no correlation between what's written and what's actually being said.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'll throw out A Forest of Stars has awesome lyrics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome band.
Yeah. Come back. They haven't released anything in like 6 years. Where are they at? Come on. Give us new A Forest of Stars. Ashen Spire too, which is, in my opinion, just sort of a second A Forest of Stars, but they kind of like their first album is pure A Forest of Stars worship, and I think not enough people know A Forest of Stars to recognize that. With a Hostile Architecture, something like that was the second album. They kind of became their own thing. They went a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more modern, social with their lyrics, and that got a lot of justified recognition for that. So they write some good stuff too. Some real like raw, gritty, but still meaningful, verbiage.
I love that kind of like theatrical singing, like with that Garrett guy with how do you say To the West? Slice the Cake? Yeah. Man, that album, right? Yeah, that Slice the Cake,
No. I never latched onto that album for 2 reasons. One, the production was too intense, and 2, there are too many lyrics. There's no breaks. It's just nonstop screaming for like 70 minutes. And I'm like, even I, needs a little progressiveness, needs a little up and down, and I didn't find that with it. But
well, have you listened to the 30-minute ambient prologue?
I have listened to that. I probably enjoyed that more than Odyssey to the West itself.
All right.
Dude, 2023, I know we kind of got to move on, but just last year, same with Ashen Spire, but that fucking Sprain album. It felt like last year was a great year for like dudes just bringing back the meltdown. Vocalists having a meltdown.
Chat Pile.
Yeah.
Chat Pile I like. Chat Pile
I wasn't as into it as the culture was. I thought it was a little too weird. But like the last track where he kind of goes way off the deep end, that's a banger.
Chat Pile, I think, will eventually do exactly what I want them to do. I don't know if they've done it yet. I haven't listened to that new single. Sometimes on 1 or 2 songs, they do exactly what I want them to do. Other times, the rest, they do not. But also, their vocals have that, like, the vocalist is actually not okay in a real way style. And that's cool. But yeah, Sprain also, Lama's Effigy, super good lyrics. Dude's freaking out.
The Worm
reminded me I never finished that album. I kept meaning to listen to it because I love a long album, but I never got around to it.
It's amazing.
It's good stuff.
So Jeff.
So my album was Hourglass, Voids and Visions. I discovered this band around when they released their second album, a couple of years after that, actually. My friend Trapper, who is in Scorched Moon, actually introduced them to me. The band's from Utah, and I'm a really big fan of their first two albums. And it's funny, they've had a different vocalist on each of their four albums that they've released. This new one having a brand new vocalist, and I think this new vocalist isn't their strongest of their catalog, but the front man of the band is Brick Williams. He's the guitarist and songwriter, and this album contains four songs, four epics, which is in contrast with their older albums, which they did have a couple epics here and there, but this one goes all out, just full prog epics. And instrumentally, I think it's a great album, although it's not my favorite of their catalog. But I enjoyed it, and I'm interested to see where they go next, as this is their first new album in 15 years. And so they're kind of re-entering the scene, having not released something in a long time.
Do you know
So,
if it's a concept album?
I'm not 100% on that. It could be, but
I got a vibe of just like each song has its own story.
yeah,
But it didn't seem that they were all.
I think as they are like separate epics, I think that makes more sense that they're each their own story. So I liked the album, and I'm interested to see what you guys thought of it.
Want to go first?
I'll go first.
Go Bishop.
So I am curious, Jeff, what is like, what are some of your favorite prog bands? Like when you're listening to a prog album,
Yeah.
and in your head, and maybe not everybody really listens to music in this way. I know that
Yeah.
I sometimes try not to. I have to make myself, okay, don't compare this
Right.
to other things. What are some of your favorite prog albums, just off the dome?
I mean, Dream Theater Scenes from Memory is one of my all-time favorites. Opeth, you got Blackwater Park, Ghost Reveries. Like, I love those albums. There's Arion is full of some awesome epic concepts, and I'm also a big fan of like the Flower Kings, and
Okay, yeah,
I've got a bunch of records around me. Devin Townsend. In recent years, I've like listened to him like nonstop. He's one of my favorite artists.
This is me finding out in real time that Jeff and I are best friends.
So what I wrote for this album is pretty short. This is Mormon prog metal, actually.
Oh,
They're
gosh, that's good.
It's from
it's
Utah.
fucking Mormon prog metal. Their vocalist is a gospel singer for a Latter-day Saints church. And after I read that, it fucking sounds like Mormon prog metal. Now, like retrospectively, that's kind of what it sounds like. The lyrics, I was trying to be fair and be like, I cannot compare this to anything, because again, I think that there surely is some level of earnesty to write music like that at all, to write lyrics like that at all, and say, yes, I will perform on this album, I will sing for you, I will be in this band. I don't think that you can just not give a shit at all, but the lyrics are actually so horribly bad that they became like awesome again. Really, some of just maybe some of the worst lyrics ever written from an adult man. But because I was listening to it at work and I was laughing out loud, because they are just so funny to me.
Can you read us a passage?
Oh, I would love to. Give me,
with a voice or something.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I can't replicate it. I can't replicate it. Let me see. There was one section that I really wanted to read very badly. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So this, okay, we were talking about what's the reason behind parts of songs. Why are they? What is the thing they're trying to do? And that applies to guitar writing, drumming. What are they trying to express here? So here's some lyrics. Moving forward to fall behind. Okay, got a little oxymoron. Okay. Holding on to lose my mind. Okay, that's oxymoron number 2.
Got a
Checking in when I'm checked out. Wearing in what's been worn out.
Deep.
Rising up to fall back down. Leaving shore to run aground. And at this point, I'm laughing out loud. And I'm like, there's no way it's going to keep going. Breaking ties to bind them fast. Looking forward to what has passed. No way it's going to keep going. Killing time to bring to life. A fractured thought that won't arrive. No way it will keep going. It keeps fucking going.
It's a 24-minute song. There's plenty of room.
It's just like, there's no way. It sounds honestly embarrassing. It's embarrassing to write that. It's childish. It's hilarious. It's fucking hilarious in a way that it made me like it. It's so like tacky that it disarms you from listening to it in a normal way. It would kind of be like if your friend was reading you. If I had a friend come to me and say, hey, I wrote these lyrics, will you tell me what you think of them? I feel like I would hear that very first moving forward to fall behind, holding on to lose my mind. I'd hear that and immediately say, you've already fucked up. I would think that. And then after 5 paragraphs, I would realize like my friend is just different than me. My friend is just different and I shouldn't critique it.
It's a little bit of that vibe of like when your aunt wants to read a handwritten poem at a funeral and you're like, oh, this isn't going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to have like the dumbest rhyme scheme. I can't. So your criticism of those lyrics is both valid, but I was a little bit insulated from it because there's a part of me that recognizes I could have probably written that section of lyrics and been absolutely as dead serious about it and been like, this is super clever. The oxymoron contrast, like it's overdone. But if you just take like 4 of those lines, it's like, I get it. It's just playful. They're mixing metaphors and drawing contrast and okay, like it goes on too long, but like I get what they were going for. And they're so dead serious about it. Like you said, it's like, this is insane, but at the same time, like they mean it. So, all right, I'm in.
I think with him, I am a little curious. Does he really mean it? Like, because he's a gospel singer. He is a skilled vocalist. He's a skilled vocalist. I don't know if he's done like progressive metal type stuff before. Maybe he has. But if he hasn't, was this his first, like the band came to him and said, hey, you're a great singer. Would you be our vocalist? And he was like, okay, I like this. This is cool. I'll write some lyrics. And maybe it just kind of, he's not really writing stuff like that often. But that being said, I could also sort of see it being a Mormon album about faith in a way.
This is the Mormon Neil Morse is what I'm learning. Because Neil Morse's solo project lyrics are exactly this corny.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I've never heard of him. Who is that?
No.
Spock's Beard frontman.
Yeah.
Who?
The frontman of Spock's Beard.
Old frontman of Spock's Beard and then solo and then also was in Transatlantic, which you asked for prog recommendations. I think Transatlantic, The Whirlwind, and Arion 01011001 are my top 2 by a large margin. So
yeah, you gotta.
I'm not against cheese. I mean, Transatlantic's pretty cheesy, but they're so good. There's just 4 people at the top of their craft, and sometimes 5 because they got Daniel Gildenlau in the back doing various things on some of their tours. So I love them.
I would love to check these out. I'm excited because, like I said, if someone really, really loves an album and they can make a case for me, it will absolutely change the way that I listen to it. And sometimes when I'm listening to an album and like if I have an opinion of it that does seem maybe like it is too harsh, I'm totally aware of myself to be like, okay, I'm kind of being an asshole. Like it's not that serious. Like it doesn't have to be the most serious badass thing, and trying to compare it to your favorite music. I mean, then if you're always listening through the lens of how good is this in comparison to my favorite albums, then a lot of stuff is going to sound like shit to you. So yeah, I ended up thinking that it was like very fun, but it is very funny. I also think that the album art is AI, which is kind of
I can confirm that. So the graphic artist used AI generated images and photoshopped them. So AI was the original source, and then they kind of manipulated them further.
If you told me 50% of the album was AI too, I'd probably
yeah, for real.
So you guys talked about the lyrics a lot, but what do you think about the music behind the lyrics?
Unforgettable in nearly every way, and like I also think that
unforgettable.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgettable in every way. Maybe this is the only one out of these 4 that we've chosen here, but the mix is like super flat.
Yeah,
it's like not an opinionated.
It's extremely clean.
Extremely clean, and there's like sometimes you'll listen to a record and be like, "Who mixed this?" They had an opinion on the album because they made something extra loud that was going against the total balance of the record. The only thing that's louder than anything else really are the vocals, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
Because there are like cool parts happening, but the instrumentation feels like it nearly never shines unless the dude has just gone quiet.
Yeah. I felt that way. So I enjoyed this album, and this was actually the first I'd heard of Hourglass, and I don't know how I missed them, being a prog head for 20 plus years now, and they had albums back in the 2000s. I was not aware of them. I mean, their last album before this was a double disc, like 140-minute album, which I'm absolutely going to go back and check out because that's, again, everything I want. Like, please give me all the length in my prog. So, Jeff throws this into the chat and I click on it and it's 25, 10, 14, 25 for the time. I'm like, I'm going to love this album. I already love this album. I haven't even clicked play yet. And then I click play and I'm like, all right, this is prog. It's what prog should sound like. And then like 20 minutes into track 1, it just felt like not much had happened. I'm like, where was the song? And what's funny about it is like almost immediately when track 2 starts, there's something a little bit more aggressive in that song that's more memorable. And I'm like, is this a different band? Like, why did they do 25 minutes of almost nothing and then start bringing out the big guns? I think the back half of the album does get a little bit more interesting, more stuff going on, but both the mix and the composition are pretty flat. It's pretty bog standard prog, which if you like that, and I do, you'll enjoy the album, but I don't think it's on the same tier as stuff like Transatlantic or Dream Theater or anything like that. It's more along the lines of Moon Safari, which is a band that like occasionally pops up on my YouTube and I click on it and I'm like, yeah, this is fine. Their album from last year was really good. It felt like a version of this that had a little bit more going on musically and even vocally that was, different, that had stuff to it. I think this is probably also in the Fates Warning wheelhouse. I don't listen to Fates Warning because I've never found them that interesting. And this is kind of that vibe. It's like, yes, this is prog. It's very traditional. There's no like sudden death growls anywhere on the album. We didn't mention it, but Azure in their last track before the ending, the 16-minute Trench of Nalu, there's like a full-blown death black metal part with screaming and blast beats. And you're like, well, that came out of nowhere. Hourglass is not going to do that to you. They're just steady, flatline, solid prog for 70 minutes. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, their first two albums, give those ones a listen. Those are more, they are a little bit more memorable, I would say.
I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah.
So you and me, Matt, are pretty much alike. You know, I like big prog songs. I'm a prog guy at heart at first. Then I started branching in all sorts of directions. And like you, I didn't know about that Hourglass band. So I remember seeing that album in my, weekly routine of scouring Bandcamp and music websites to find new music. And, I've sampled it a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. So I just, hopped over them. And then when Jeff suggested that album, I went back to it and, gave it a full listen. And yeah, it's like you said, it's prog, it's definitely prog. It's got vibe. I think it sounds like Arian's Theory of Everything, where it's without the opera part, it's just one singer, but the Theory of Everything, it's pretty good. It's all right. It's got riffs, but I think it's pretty much bland at the end of the day, And another band that this made me think of is The Great Gamble. So you're not gonna know about that unless you're Matt.
I've heard the name, probably from you. I want to say
maybe from me.
Yeah,
but like they released an album. I don't know when. I can check that, but they released an album called Book One in 2012, and then nothing. So no Book Two, and they got ideas, and it's prog, and it's got like at least one long song, a bunch of long songs, 10 minutes, 9, 10, 10, and then a 16-minute closer. But at the end of the day, it's good. It's all right, but it's not as memorable as I want it to be. You kind of listen to that and you're like, man, I'd love it if this was, just a little bit better, if it had something to latch onto. It's just like
I'd love if this was better.
No, but that's true. Like I forgot to mention it, but as I was listening through Hourglass, I'm like, I wish this was like 20% better. Like it just needs a little.
Yeah, and I was thinking, something. I wish this was as good as their older albums.
There you go. So the old one's 20% better. We'll check that out.
Yeah, it's like a flat wall. You need something to hold on to, right? Even if it's cracks, even if it's imperfections, you just need something to latch onto. That's like, okay, that's something memorable, right? And yeah, I think that's about it. But I didn't get bothered by the lyrics. I'm not a lyrics guy, as I said, so I didn't even like hear them. I didn't compute them. I just like, yeah, that singer's all right, and everything's just all right, and it could just have been better, I think. It's hard to say, I'm here judging like on my ass and writing no music. Like, well, at least they released something, and it's good.
Definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
A specific example of what we're batting around here and what we're talking about. I was listening to this one more time today in preparation for this conversation. Track 4, there's definitely a story. It's got characters. There's the Lone Knight and the Immortal. And I'm listening through, and I'm not like reading the lyrics as I listen, but there's a repeated chorus that's 8 lines delivered by the Immortal. I think it's probably 3 times, maybe 4 over the course of the 25-minute song. And the song ends with that. And I was like, I don't get it. There's like a 25-minute song, there's a story being told, but it doesn't sound like it went anywhere because it's just this
Yeah.
repeated chorus. So I went back and looked at it, and I think the song, the lyrical progression is that the knight is on this journey, and at the end of the journey, he ends up morphing into and becoming the new immortal. Like there's an immortal that's calling the knight to him, and his duty ends up to be like taking over the mantle of the immortal. And so the last chorus is actually delivered by the knight who has become the immortal. Okay, that's cool. But the music of the song didn't get me there at all because there's no dynamics in the composition to indicate what's happening in the story, which is what we talked about Azure doing so well. Hourglass didn't do that. It's just flat music, and okay, there's something cool being said, but they're not communicating with each other.
Yeah, there's something to do with that kind of story, with that arc, there's leitmotifs and stuff like that that you could bring around, or, a change of a modulation or something, or
Right.
just bring another theme, another timbre, another instrument, something to indicate, like you said, that roles have changed in a way.
Say fuck one time on any of these songs. Just say fuck.
They're not allowed to.
Yeah.
I don't know. They must not be. Because, like, I'm surprised. It genuinely surprises me to hear anyone say, I don't really hear the lyrics when someone's listening to music. Because it's like, in the case of this album, how could that be true? They're the loudest part of the entire song, of every song. And like, even if you aren't processing every word that's being said and trying to follow the story like purposefully, he's always talking about time and how he's gonna do some shit with time. And again, it just comes off as it ends in this way where it's like, did he win? Because it kind of sounds like all of the lyrics have this feeling of I have won from the very beginning. Kind of has this like triumphant, hey, stuff is bad, but I'm good vibe to it. And at the end, he just feels like the same. It surprises me for anyone to say you not really processing the lyrics. They're like hard to ignore, especially on this record.
Yeah, well, I usually listen to stuff while doing some other stuff, so
Same.
maybe that's
Yeah.
one way to phase out the the lyrics or the computing power. So
Fair enough.
yeah, it's just like another instrument with like you could replace it with a saxophone or anything, and I'm like, yeah, same
When
thing.
it's not unique and varied enough to make
Yeah,
you pay attention to the words, then it just blends in and becomes another sonic texture. And I think that's what we see here.
For sure.
But
Understood.
guys, I think I got to say it. This is the best Mormon prog metal album of the last 5
Oh
years.
yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe the last 10.
Maybe.
When was their last album?
09.
Yeah, 15 years ago.
Of the last 15 years.
well, should we move on?
Let's do it.
All right. So for number 4, I wanted to bring out the Kraanerg Heart of a Cherry Pit Sun album. It's kind of a biased thing because I released that on the Not Music label, but I wanted to bring it today because kind of to explain why I chose it. I don't release any album, and this came around. It's not the leader of the band and basically the whole band. They sent me a promo for the album, and I just like hit play on the first track, and within like, I don't know, 2 minutes, I was like, hell yeah, this is awesome. And they mentioned a release date. I think it was in June or something like that. No, it was before June, but I'm like, do you want to release it on my label? You know, that would be cool, right? And eventually, we decided to go forward with that, and we pushed the release date back a little bit to get the album printed out and all. But yeah, this is an album that's basically like from their word, they are like third stream jazz with like a more modern take, like a distortion, kind of I don't know how to say, like not a metal approach because they say they're not metal, right? And when I was sending out promos for that album to other music blogs, I used the term blackened soul, and I guess I don't know if that's true or not because it's not their intention, but that's what I felt when listening to that. I'm like, that sounds like soul with like black metal or something like that. And it's yeah, like I love that album. It's like three long tracks. It's instrumental, but they have lyrics. Um, so I don't know how exactly they play out, but they have lyrics and they're important to each track. I guess it's more like uh, poems that accompany each tracks. Like you can take that as you want. Um, and yeah, I love that album enough to go ahead and print the album with Kraanerg. And I wanted to know what you guys thought about it. Matt.
Yeah, I had almost the same reaction you did the first time hearing it. You sent it to us in chat a while back, and you didn't say at that point that, hey, this is an album I'm going to release. I don't know if maybe you hadn't even decided yet, but you just sent a SoundCloud link and said, check this out. What do you think? And yeah, like as soon as the first song, there's a little bit of an intro, and then everything kicks in. And by everything, I mean you have your traditional metal instrumentation and saxophone and violin. And all that together, I jumped out of my seat. I'm like, where has this been? Why aren't more bands doing this? This is it. Like, this is awesome. You know, dock it half a point for being instrumental, not having vocals, but there's so much else good about it that this is one of those cases where I don't care. This is deeply interesting music. And part of that is like, yeah, there is jazz, or maybe as you mentioned, third stream, you know, which is sort of this jazz and classical. So it's jazz, classical, and metal in some proportion all at the same time. It's not quite black. There's no blast beats. There's no like super intense parts, but it has like a very rough texture to the metal. It's mixed very like bombastically. Maybe a little bit, you know, the production could be tuned up a little bit for the next release, but I can't complain. I'm certainly no one to speak on good quality production. Looking at my own stuff, you know, I would kill for sound like this. But it's hard to place. You know, it's not quite. How are you saying Zool? I just say Zool, Zoil,
Yeah,
something like that.
Seul.
I just say
It's
Zool.
French, right?
Sure, it's Zool to me. But you know, I posted it on Reddit with the tag Black and Zool. Sure, it's close enough because it Zool to me it has that like it's just very busy. It's not necessarily progressive. And you know, this album, you listen to it and you're like, okay, this is prog, but a lot of it is in 4/4, really. It's just very busy, complex, you know, richly instrumented 4/4 a lot of the time. And it also has like hooks. Like music this complex and this busy has no
Mm-hmm.
business being as catchy as it does, but there are piano parts and sax parts that you will be humming long after you've turned this
Yeah.
album off. It's like, whoa, like how did this insane album like burrow that deep into my psyche? And it does. Like it sort of blends together is maybe a criticism. Like it's not flat. It has dynamics, but it's sort of bouncing between two poles. And you know, if I've got a riff stuck in my head, I can't tell you if that riff is from track one or track two, but I can tell you it's awesome. So you know, that's good enough for me. I thought this was a fantastic album and a very worthy release.
I can go next. I didn't love this. I did think that the production was kind of bad in an unfortunate way. because it sounds very smeary to me. There are times where I can't tell what is guitar and what is violin, I guess, because I will say, so talking about like you're 2 minutes into that very first song and you're like, this is fucking awesome. I definitely felt that way, and I got excited because you get this like, it just sounds like this classic like dissonant black metal sort of chord or disso death chord. So I hear that chord and it's just repeated and I'm like, dude, this is going to be sick as fuck. But 22 minutes, and I don't feel like I don't feel like I'm taken to some I don't feel like I'm taken very far away from really where the song begins. I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong. I listened to the pronunciation just a second ago. But the dude who plays guitar on this is a guitarist of Kosnatieni.
Yeah,
That dude, the last album from that band was fucking sick.
yeah, it
Like
was.
actually awesome. Loved that. That dude is a shredder. So if the things that are registering to me as guitar are the guitar on this record, the guitar tone is like fucked up in some way, where it sounds almost like the least pleasing frequencies of the guitar are what are actually left. To
Only
me,
mids.
it's like literally just 500 and 200. They just left that, and everything else is just cut out. So I thought that was unfortunate because I know that dude is an amazing guitar player. The piano parts, to me, this is again just a mixing or production thing. The piano parts sound like they're recorded somewhere else. So when they come in, the timbre of the piano feels like it doesn't belong with some of the other parts. It's not even that the piano is playing something that doesn't belong melodically, but just the tonal quality of the piano sounds as if it does not belong. And yeah, it's one of those things where I listen to it, and I feel this way a lot with music, where I'm very curious. How did everyone in the band decide, hey, this song's done? Like, why was this song 22 minutes and not 17 minutes long? How did they decide that? Or how did they decide this is good or this isn't good? I'm curious about that as well.
Well, I think it's not a band thing, right? I think Nat is pretty much the songwriter. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's like anything, right? Why did you write this song like you did, or something like that? It just, I guess it felt right at the time.
Yeah, I think maybe kind of like with lyrics, maybe lyrics are the thing that really make it unmistakable why something was written, potentially, or if it sounds derivative of something else, then that alone is like, okay, just an example, instrumental band, Town Portal, okay,
Yeah.
instrumental math rock band. I think their stuff sounds cool, and it doesn't need lyrics to just have a very, very basic, this is the goal of the band. We want to make kind of cool math rock, but it has some more bass than usual. I'm like, okay, I get that. I hear it from song one. With this, the very first moment of the first song feels like the climax of the whole song. Uh, Listening to the new Skin Tension that came out, I don't know if y'all listen to that, but
Yeah.
another example would be like in Liturgy, when their songs hit the peak, even stuff that's supposed to be heavy or dark or whatever, it ends up feeling like joy. Because even the second track, the deluge pipes burst from joy alone, bursting with joy, that sounds like it describes the first 3 minutes of the first song to
Mhm.
me. And
I see what you mean.
I love when there's that like everything is going at the same time. Uh, is it Zool? I associate Zool more with like I don't know, almost just more staccato in a way.
Yeah.
Like Koenji Hayaki, that's Zool. I'm like, that's music you listen to it and you're like, okay, I get it. You're the best in the world. Bye. Um,
Well,
with this,
actually, you know, Japanese Zoe is pretty much its own thing, right? Because it all started with Magma in
yeah,
France, and I don't actually like Magma all that much. You know,
I agree.
it's very weird, and it's very kind of drawn out, I think.
It's weird for the sake of weird. It's weird as a proof of concept.
Yeah,
Like other people should do something with this, and other people have. But yeah,
yeah.
I've never found Magma that interesting.
never delved super deep, but the drummer of Skin Tension, who I do love, loves Magma. So maybe they've got like a good ass drummer or something, but I know they made their own like language.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's cool. Um,
I reviewed a Zool album for the blog one time by We Pyrrhic Conquerors, which I think was
Oh
a
yeah.
solo project of somebody in a band, and I don't remember the name of the band, but basically the We Pyrrhic Conquerors album is built out of samples of the band's recordings. So he just like chopped it up and rearranged it and turned it into Zool. And I was like,
that
this
sounds
is
cool.
fascinating. It's a
That's
really
cool.
interesting album.
Yeah, and maybe it is also just because I don't listen to a lot of music that even contains saxophone in the first place, but it didn't have any familiar melodies to me.
Hmm.
Sometimes I think that's really interesting if it feels so unfamiliar that the music sounds kind of alien. But with this, they were nearly familiar, and I wanted things to resolve or for tension to be built in a way that I could anticipate, and it never really happened. That in of itself is not a negative thing, but it didn't work for me. I wanted it to. This one kind of frustrated me because it felt like it had a bunch of stuff that came really close to being sick as hell, especially that first song. But I mean, it's 43 minutes long, and I just don't think it needs to be 43 minutes long.
I
That's
don't
my
blame you.
take.
I think the things you pointed out as criticisms are totally valid. The production quality for any one specific instrument is not the production quality I would have picked for that instrument. So then when you take 6 or 7 of those instrument tracks and blend them together, it's grating almost at first. It takes some time for your ears to adjust to the mix of like, okay, I have to respect that this is what the album sounds like. If I'm going to listen to it, I'm just going to have
Yeah.
to deal with this. And you can get there, but it still sounds weird. It's a very wet mix. You called it smeary. It kind of sounds like it was recorded in a sewer. You know, the
Yeah, it
tone of the
does.
saxophone is very biting, and it's almost like it floats in from the sky. And the piano is very distant, and there's clean guitar doubling the distorted guitar a lot of the time, or not even doubling, but doing something different, which is even murkier because it's in the same sonic space. It is the mix is very alien. I don't know if the song lands it there, but yeah, to your point, 3 minutes into this album, I was thinking this is my album of the year. And 43 minutes in,
Yeah.
I was like, no, probably not. Like, I really liked that. It was great. It doesn't do quite enough to be album of the year worthy, but I think that the ideas there's it's kind of like with the early Azure work. It's like there's something here. If you can evolve it into something a little bit better, it's going to be really special. I still think this album is special, but it's definitely not perfect.
I get what you mean. And to answer what Bishop said about the progression of within the songs, I think I feel like the songs are more like paintings rather than movies, you know? It's not like they have a goal to achieve. It's just like they present a painting, a landscape, something, you know? And I think that's the way I see them in being not really evolutive, like they don't evolve much, and they
I don't
don't
buy that.
result to anything. You
I have
don't
to
buy
interrupt
that.
you. I don't buy that because the Bandcamp says, by far my most complete artistic statement so far, a diary of my life over the past 4 years in the form of Prog Madness. A diary? I agree about like, yeah, everything's a painting in the way that we can compare like senses to other senses. Whether you say it's a painting with layers or a film with an arc or whatever, both are meaningful comparisons. Absolutely. Um, this would be, I could talk about this way longer than anyone would ever want to hear, but to say that you don't think that they set out with a goal, I'm not sure that that's actually possible with music. I don't know if that's possible. I think that there is an intention whenever you pick up an instrument.
Yeah, there is. There's an intention and all that. And I cannot speak for them, but music is also like how you react to it or how you take it in. Like
For
half
sure.
of the music is just listening.
For
And
sure.
that's the way I kind of processed it, you know, as paintings. But maybe that was not the intention. Maybe that was another thing. But interpretation of what you hear is just as part of art as making it.
Absolutely. Absolutely agreed.
Jeff,
Yeah.
you've been quiet.
Yeah. I just don't listen to this type of music that much. I thought it was pretty good, but I agree with the complaints about the mix and the production. It has a lot of layers, and a lot of it just kind of blends together in a way where it's like you can't really pick what to focus on. It just becomes noise in a way. Um, but I get that that's kind of what it's going for, and if you get used to it and get in the right mindset, it works. But um, I don't typically listen to that type of music. Um, and technically, I thought the playing was good and it had some definitely interesting parts to it. But um, I don't really have much more to add other than that I thought it was good, but pretty heavily layered and kind of need more room to breathe in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. It
I like
is
I like unique
claustrophobic.
bands.
Yeah.
I like unique bands for better or worse. And when I heard this, I was like, well, I haven't heard anything like this.
Yeah.
So I think that's its credit. It's got plenty of flaws, but you haven't heard anything like it.
That's definitely true. Um, and even to say that, I don't always understand what the point is or what the goal is or whatever. That is that is its own novelty, and that's not a negative thing. Uh, I reviewed an album in like 2022 or 21 or something from a band called Cloak of Altering.
Oh yeah.
And that band is just like, what the fuck is this dude thinking? Like, how is this the next part? Why is it the next part? And sometimes it's unenjoyable, but other times it's just like the product as a whole being so bizarre and just sounding almost incoherent. Referring to Cloak of Altering is like, that's what makes it feel appropriate in a way. And so, yeah, this was unique. It's definitely not like anything I've heard recently, at least. I don't even know what I might compare it to.
Yeah. It's definitely one that's hard to pinpoint.
So one of my bands that I go back to that's not my favorite band, but I'm always complaining about bands that don't utilize their potential, and potential is a scary thing because sometimes you can have too much potential and it needs to be like reined in into something cohesive. I think that's a little bit what we have with Kraanerg here. It's like there's so much
Mm,
going on, and that's great. Another band
mm.
that does that in a slightly different way is Cleric. Cleric is so
Don't say it.
maximalist in what they
So
do.
good.
It's bizarre prog and it's incredibly
good.
talented. But when I listen to it, I'm like, okay, this is a little too much. Like there's not enough structure here. It's just like unbridled potential. And I'd like it to be reined back just a little bit. No?
Love Cleric. Actually, something I wanted to say is you said something in the chat probably like months ago. Maybe even longer, but talking about bands that incorporate, let's just say, for example, like classical music with metal. And you had the take of like bands who are hesitant to do them both at the same time, you are weak for that. And so when I heard this and it was instantly both, I remembered you saying that, and just your take on that, I feel like it sculpted my taste with music like this, because I was like, they're doing both instantly, and I think that's cool. It's like, it's ballsy to do that, or bold. Like, it's everything right away. I do like that. I commend that.
There's a big difference between jazz fused metal and metal that has a saxophone player playing saxophone on it.
Yeah.
And this is very much in the, this has real jazz to it. This has a real sense of like the fusion of these styles. And I'm down for metal with saxophone, but there are bands, I don't need to name names, that just it's metal with saxophone. It's not jazzy metal. Jazz has a fundamentally different compositional philosophy, and most metal bands don't know how to access that. So they're just writing metal songs and they're throwing in a saxophone. And it's like,
exactly.
Might sound nice, but it's not jazz metal.
One band that does the metal with the saxophone thing, but actually does true jazz blended with metal, I think, was the debut album by Ever Forthright. Have you listened to that one?
I'm not sure I have, and I should.
It's more like a gent thing. Gent mixed with jazz, but I think it's pretty much like the big string chugs and stuff like that. But they do all these substitutions and stuff like that, like really weird harmonic and rhythmic stuff. And the main composer and guitar player is, I think he's first, above all, I think he's a jazz player, a jazz guitar player, and he's doing that band. Or maybe it's the other way around, but he's definitely, he's released some jazz albums that are really like, they're jazz, they're softer, they're not like fusion with metalcore or something. And they're really good. I really like his stuff, and like that first album from Ever Forthright, it's definitely one of my all-time favorite albums. Maybe it's not like an objective thing. It's just like it hit me at like the right time, at the right place, and just like it stuck with me.
Yeah, that can happen.
And they've released like a long-awaited second album this year, and it's not as good. So maybe the hype was too high. Maybe they just objectively went downwards in quality, but I really didn't like it as much as the first one.
I feel like we could do a whole 2-hour episode on bands whose second album was way worse than their debut.
Could do more than one.
That Ever Forthright album, people were posting that in like Mathcore Index. So it gets love from, I guess, a lot of different guys. A lot of different folks are into that. I had never heard of this, but I saw this Tekken Flux album posted around. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, the second one I think is weaker than the first one. The first one is pretty much like Periphery with saxophone and jazz. Like I think it's actually the former singer of Periphery on the first one. It's I don't remember his name. Spencer Sotelo, is that right?
Oh no.
I don't
What?
pay any attention to periphery.
Oh no.
Why do you say that?
Spencer's voice is so unique. His voice is so unique. He's another guy who I've I have had friends who are like they're periphery guys, you know? Periphery guys, animals as leaders guys. I say there's some amount of separation there, but big overlap. But I have some very good friends who are like periphery when they were younger. That was their shit. I didn't have like a periphery older brother. I had like a Protest the Hero first album older brother.
Hell
Love the
yeah,
first album.
Kazaya.
Yeah, I had that instead. And if a dude's gonna sing like that, there's only a few who I think are really allowed to, and Protest the Hero guy is allowed to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's awesome.
Going back to sort of bands that do the fusion of jazz correctly, there's two examples I always point out of people who nailed it. On the lighter side, barely even metal, the debut album by Seven Impale is like right down the middle of jazz and prog rock, and like in that sort of Mars Volta Closure in Moscow prog rock sense, but with they have saxophones and they have brass, but they are integrated and they're part of the composition in such a way that it doesn't feel tacked on. It feels like we're really doing jazz. And it's that album. All their albums are good, but their debut really nails that line.
What's that band again?
Seven Impale, City of the Sun is their debut. It was my album of the year 2014. The more extreme side of things, other than KO Dot, who goes without saying, they do it right. The Polish instrumental band Merkaba. There's a couple
Oh
different
yeah,
Merkabas, but the one that released the album Moloch, and they have a second album. I don't remember what it's called. It wasn't as good as Moloch, but Moloch, it is very metal, but the writing style is very jazz, and that's what I was saying is super rare to see. And they did it.
I have a band that pushes that fusion a bit farther or in a different direction at least. It's a composer actually. It's Nathan Parker Smith, and with the album Not Dark Yet. It's been a while. I don't know what year he released that, but it's actually like a large ensemble jazz or a big band jazz with guitar and drums, and it's kind of metal, but it's really a large ensemble jazz album, and it's really cool, I think. It's been like ages since I've listened to that album, but it definitely stuck in my mind for that. You should check it out.
Yeah, I've been taking notes of some of the stuff that y'all have mentioned. Uh, for jazz and metal, Imperial Triumphant, I think, is probably my favorite to do it. But even still, I know we've talked about this in the past, but like
Do
talking
they,
about
I'm sorry, do they bring jazz though?
I think they do, because there are parts where it's just sort of like brass sitting on top of black metal, which isn't really fusion, although I love Vile Luxury. But they have parts in the last couple albums where they kind of like, when they go into an ambient section, their drummer becomes a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
he is a
playing
jazz drummer.
drum. I mean, I
Yeah.
saw them live a couple years ago, and I was absolutely floored at his technique.
Is he Grohovsky?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah. Oh man,
he's
amazing drummer.
outstanding.
Amazing drummer, and maybe that's just a bias because I think that their music is really cool and it's super compelling.
Yes.
I think part of why it actually really does feel like jazz is because, it's like their image is so locked in. They've locked in that image super well. They're all really good musicians. The thing that never feels like jazz to me is when there is screaming. We talked about this in chat one time of like, I've never seen any jazz performances. Granted, I've only seen like a handful where someone is fucking screaming. That inherently to me is just like, that is not jazzy to me.
I'm sure it's been done.
Oh, surely it's been done. But maybe this is just a weird psychological thing where I'm sure there are a lot of jazz musicians who like impose some sort of sanctity on jazz. Like it needs to be this, if not pure thing, this more pure thing that doesn't include as much distortion or fucking Euro blasts in it. And at the same time, I'm sure that there's also a huge population of jazz musicians who are like, that's not true. It can have Euro blasts. You can scream in it and it's still jazz. And then it becomes a question of like, well, what is or isn't jazz? And all I will say is Between the Buried and Me is not jazzy. I'll say
fair.
that.
I won't argue that. I love Between the Buried and Me, but they're not. They do jazz adjacent things in some of their songs, but they're not. I'm not going to call them a jazz fusion prog metal band. No.
Yeah.
What's really funny is when the closest they ever came was Voice of Trespass from Automata 2, and all they did was write a Diablo Swing Orchestra song. Like it's literally, when I first heard that, I was like, that was on Pandora's Pinata. Like I've heard that riff before.
It's tough to do it. There's an album that's supposed to be on the second part of this video that kind of does the doom jazz thing that I think any annoying guy like us has been like, doom jazz, and then you look it up, you find out that there's Mount Kilimanjaro doom jazz or whatever. You're like, it's in the fucking band name, it must be the best. And should doom jazz exist? I'll talk about it next episode.
Yes.
I think that's one way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Good. Let's end it on a teaser for next time.
Yeah.
Come back and hear us talk about doom jazz.
Well,
sounds good.
That's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Had a blast.
Yeah, glad we could make it work.
totally.
Me too.
So, any closing thoughts? Matt?
Music is good. Seek out music that pushes boundaries.
Hell
We'll help
yeah.
you find some, but it's out there.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, just keep trying to find new things, and we'll keep trying to push new things as well. Yeah.
Bishop?
Same sentiment that Matt and Jeff have said. Keep listening to weird stuff. Keep checking out the blog. It's the best music blog on the damn internet. No ads on the site. Where else are you going to find that? It's the best website. Yeah, music is good. It's good for your heart and soul.
And the
Write
important
better
part
lyrics.
is, yeah,
Yeah,
the important part is the friends we made along the way.
so true.
The
Hell
real
yeah.
jazz fusion was inside us all along.
So true.
All right. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks
Yeah.
for that.
Bye-bye.